A lot of people consider the infestation to be the most terrifying creation in the Origin system. A hive mind with its only goal being to grow by consuming every single living thing it comes into contact with. A goal that seems so mindless, but one that's executed with such ferocity and relentlessness that instills fear into the entire galaxy. Not even just the system, the galaxy. However, the infestation does suffer several weaknesses that cause it to be somewhat less intimidating than what that description makes it seem like. First off, the most powerful creatures in creation, the Tenno, pilot the perfect weapons to completely call and slaughter the infestation. Warframes, being infested pieces of equipment themselves, are completely resistant to corruption and have been the ultimate driving force to limit the spread of the infestation. This extreme calling has kept the infestation, besides for a few instances, of ever growing an intelligent enough hive mind to actually understand the tactics of war and be able to properly invade and attack population centers. Most examples of powerful infested forces that we see are leftover clumps of the disease from during the Old War, such as Lephantis, Deimos, and to some extent the Jordis Golem. However, what if I were to tell you that was an enemy just as mindlessly ferocious as the infestation, just as ruthless, and with their only intent being to kill, easy to produce, and was led and controlled by some of the most intelligent military minds in the system? If all those things were true, then I'd be telling you about the Grineer ghouls, possibly the most intimidating enemy lore-wise in the entirety of Warframe. The only reason that ghouls haven't completely swarmed the system is due to them being a relatively new creation, a creation that was funded by Counselor Vahek, but more importantly, created by the madman himself, Dr. Tengus. Tengus. Unlike most of the characters that I cover in this series, I think it's important to talk about who Dr. Tengus even is, and his relevance in the game before I start talking about his accomplishments and creations. It's very likely that a large amount of my audience on this channel has either never even heard of Dr. Tengus, or completely forgotten his mentions in the game. Due to the last time that he was even mentioned was in a Ghoul Fragment journal, which was about 6 or 7 years ago at this point. I don't have the exact date, I looked it up on Reddit. And besides for his mention in the Ghoul Fragments, his only other mention in the actual game was in the Once Awake quest, where he served as the primary antagonist. However, he was never actually seen in game. I don't believe he even has any unique voice lines. And most we get from him is some transmissions we intercept that he was sending to the Twin Queens. He does make an appearance as a leading character in a Warframe comic titled Ascension though. Basically, what I want you to know about Dr. Tengus, before getting into what he's done and his personality, is that he's essentially Alad V, but Grineer, and with an incredibly dumb fucking name. Also, I will try to create a chronological line of events of what I believe Tengus has done. However, since there is so little information, this isn't 100% the right order, just my best guess at what the order is. I mean, we literally know next to nothing about this guy lore-wise. Dr. Tengus ran a facility called the Grustrag Reconditioning Facility. While we aren't sure of the day-by-day operation in the reconditioning facility, we can assume that Tengus attempts to fix, quotation fix, just making sure to say that, Grineer that may not be loyal enough to the Twin Queens, violent enough for combat, or whatever other mentally undesirable trait that Grineer soldiers may have. That's why when 3 Grineer soldiers, named Leektir, Shik Tau, and Vim Tobuk, I like that last one, slaughtered an entire troop transport ship of comrades, they were sent to the reconditioning facility. While at the facility, Tengus found that the 3 Grineer had a large amount of mutations that caused them to be much more powerful. However, they were also incredibly violent and didn't recognize allies. Or if they did recognize allies, they just didn't care. When Tengus asked Vim Tobuk why he slaughtered his allies, he simply said that the transport vehicle was taking too long to reach its destination, and he had grown impatient for the killing. Tengus then informed Vahek that he wished to keep the 3 soldiers alive so that he could experiment on them and take full advantage of their violent tendencies. The exact thing that he said to Vahek is this: Vim Tobuk, leader of the Grustrag 3, was committed after the group slaughtered all fellow Marines aboard a troop transport. Evidently, the ship took too long to reach battle and the subject was simply impatient for the killing. Like his accomplices Shik Tau and Leektir, Tobuk suffers from a rare cloning mutation. This makes him highly effective in combat, but completely unfit for duty. Recommendation: permanent incarceration for study. The subject's combat ability cannot be ignored. If the subject's aggression can be focused, he may yet prove a useful weapon. As you heard me just read, Tengus tells Vahek that if a way could be found to focus the aggression of the three, they could become useful and powerful weapons. Since the Grusdrag 3 are a threat we face in Warframe, that means that Vahek obviously supported Tengus' decision, and Tengus was able to somewhat recondition the Grusdrag 3, as we can see in the next message he sent to Vahek, which states, "Most honored Counselor Vahek, the agony treatment has worked," which basically means the torture treatment. Test shows aggression has been shifted to the Tenno. The Grusdrag 3 are now ready for release and are eager for your orders. Please note, fratricide, which means killing your friends, or brothers more particularly, fratricide is still an issue. Conditioning did not completely remove violent tendencies toward fellow grineer. My solution is the Grusdrag Bolt. When attached to a subject, this device limits combat effectiveness against all grineer personnel. The bolt will ensure collateral death is acceptably limited. I have produced a surplus of these devices. Perhaps these will also aid you with your problem. Your loyal servant, Dr. Tengus, Director of the Grusdrag Reconditioning Facility. This message shows us not only did Tengus manage to instill an unreasonable amount of hate towards the Tenno through his reconditioning, but he also managed to create a device that would be able to calm down and hold back members of the Grusdrag 3 from slaughtering their allies when the Tenno aren't around. I think the Grusdrag 3 are an excellent scenario that shows Tengus' beliefs and abilities. First off, it shows that he's incredibly intelligent. I mean, he managed to create an elite force of assassins trained to hunt down the Grineer's worst enemies from 3 Grineer who, for all extensive purposes, were more of a threat to fellow Grineer than any of their enemies at first. He also created equipment meant to just calm them down and control them, just in case they do attack their own allies once again, and even repurposed those bolts that he created in order to use them against the Tenno and affect their combat ability. This scenario also shows that he really doesn't give one single shit about his brothers or friends or associates. He didn't care at all that Grusdrag 3 killed their allies. He doesn't even care if they kill more in the future, as long as they hunt down the Tenno effectively. Basically, this is setting up the mad scientist angle when it comes to Dr. Tengus, and it shows his lack of ethics and incredible intelligence. It also provides us the information that Dr. Tengus is directly under the command of Counselor Vahek, which is an important bit of information for a scenario that we will talk about later in this video. Believe it or not, Dr. Tengus is actually considered the main antagonist in the Once Awake quest, even though he has no voice lines and doesn't make a single appearance throughout the entire quest, and is only mentioned in passing by a Lotus, and his only comments made throughout the entirety of the quest were an intercepted message to the Grineer Queens after the quest was already over. The quest does deal directly with stopping his research into the infested, however. Anyway, I doubt any of you actually remember the premise of the Once Awake quest, so I'll go ahead and give you guys the down low real quick. Because let's be honest, a lot of these early Warframe quests that have been reworked are incredibly forgettable, let's just be real. However, while I'm not incredibly sure if this is still actually canon or not, the Once Awake questline in Dr. Tengus' research is responsible for the outbreak of the infestation in the current origin system. At the start of the quest, Lotus informs you that a Grineer doctor has been experimenting with some sort of bioweapon, a weapon that would give the Grineer a huge upper hand in conflicts with the Corpus and the Tenno. The Lotus then sent the Tenno to investigate the labs that Dr. Tengus was working in. However, while attempting to steal data from the Grineer, the Tenno and the Lotus are surprised that the Grineer turned their back on the Tenno threat and instead focused on something else. It turned out that Dr. Tengus was scared of the Tenno finding him, so to create a diversion for him to escape, he purposely released the infestation from experimentation labs while he ran away. This is absolutely insane. Dr. Tengus single-handedly reintroduced the infestation into the origin system simply because the Tenno may have found and killed him, even though that would have been honestly unlikely since we weren't even looking for Dr. Tengus during that mission. This shows how incredibly selfish, cowardly, and traitorous Tengus can be. He allowed every Grineer in the lab base to die just to give him a chance to escape, a chance he likely would have had whether or not he released the infested. After the infested break out, the Lotus would later send the Tenno back to the base to blow up and eliminate every single living thing with a cascade bomb. And while the bomb did wipe out the infestation that was still on the base, certain infected organisms managed to escape and are responsible for most of the current infested breakouts that we deal with presently. After nearly dooming the entire system, including the Grineer, you'd think the Queens, or at least Vahek, would have some sort of issue with Dr. Tengus and maybe see him as a problem. Since he almost killed literally everyone, like I said. However, Dr. Tengus sent the most clutch work email ever. Like on some levels of bullshittery and shifting the blame that I've never even seen before. So I almost kind of respect it. But here's the email. I'll go ahead and read it in my sexy Tengus voice for all of you. I put in quotation marks here. I was going to wink when I said that, but I don't have face cam, so I just winked to myself. And also I'm not doing a voice because that was dumb, and I'm not actually doing that. Anyway, here's the message for Dr. Tengus. My queens, it is my shame to report that Tenno interference has caused a breach of our infested lab on M Prime. Acting immediately, I order the destruction of the facility, which has contained the outbreak. Tragically, I believe the Tenno have stolen spores with the intent to use the plague against us. I will act at once to develop a countermeasure. I will not allow this unethical behavior by Tenno to threaten our glorious cause. For the Queens, Dr. Tengus. Like I said, this email was clutch as hell, and honestly saved Bro's life. So we obviously have to pay a ton of respect to him. W. King. Also, I haven't had to do any Lotus voice acting yet today. Just Tengus Pingus. So I'm feeling pretty good right now. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the most interesting part of Tengus's lore, the Ascension comic. The last thing we're going to be talking about, and only the third time that Dr. Tengus was mentioned, is a short comic called Ascension. And when I say short, I mean like 15 pages with maybe 40 whole lines of dialogue, with most of those lines being less than 10 words. To be completely honest, I'm not convinced I found the entire comic, because it's just so short. However, apparently it is just that short. The full comic can be found on the Warframe Wikipedia if you want to read it for yourself. It has some interesting images that I think are pretty cool. Since the comic isn't super long, there isn't a lot to say. But basically opens with Dr. Tengus and Vahek talking to one another about a certain research project they were working on together. Tengus was in charge of the actual research part, and Vahek was in charge of the funding, and kind of running the show as well. Since Vahek appeared to be the one in charge, he presented the finding to an entire hall full of grineer generals and the queens themselves. The finding was, of course, the ghouls. There was a pit full of them, and Vahek stood proudly, and I mean proudly, in front of that pit. Right in front of that open pit, he stood on the edge, proudly, presenting his and Tengus's creations, the new shock troops of the grineer military, the ghouls. Tengus then pushed Vahek into the pit to show the brutality of the ghouls in an attempt to gain favor with the queens and remove Vahek from the equation. However, while the queens were amused by Tengus and appreciated his show of aggression and the ghoul's show of aggression, they ordered Tengus to rebuild Vahek, which is how we got the most machine Vahek that we're familiar with today. I mean, Tengus is honestly the biggest piece of shit in the entire Origin system. I really can't think of a single character in this game as underhanded, disloyal, and selfish as Tengus is. I mean, yeah, Ballas is a piece of shit, man, but like he's not even that bad. When and if he ever actually makes an appearance in the game, I'll take lots of joy in ending his dome-shaped head with the dumbest design in Warframe history. Dr. Tengus has one of the dumbest looking designs in all of Warframe history. He wears this weird body armor thing that reminds you of Sane armor, kind of, and only covers his upper chest and legs while leaving his waist and arms fully exposed, which is weird for Grineer, who are usually fully armored. However, that's the normal part of his armor, or costume or whatever, because he gets a giant dome on top of his head and it looks fucking stupid. He also wears a monocle on his left eye, which also looks fucking stupid. His name is also Tengus, which is yet again stupid. I mean, just look at this guy. Look at him. Anyway, my honest game theory is that Tengus was created as a joke when Warframe was a smaller game, and every once in a while they give him credit for stuff because they think it's funny, but they don't really have any intention of making a character design to look this dumb in reality in the actual game universe, because I mean, he looks really dumb. Now maybe I'm wrong about that, but his name is fucking Tengus. Now I'm really sorry if that's someone's actual name, but I'm sure if that is your name, you'd agree that you'd probably like a different name. When it comes to Tengus's personality, he might literally be Alad V, except Grineer. Their personalities are nearly identical. I just say Alad cares about money more, but even then, money is power in the corpus world, and all Tengus cares about is power. They're both snakes, they're both incredibly intelligent, they both lack any sort of ethics and do the darkest experiments possible. Obviously, Alad is considerably more fleshed out, since he's, actually in the game, but from what we do know, they are basically twins. I wish I could say more about Tengus, but we don't have a ton of information to go off of, and from the scenarios he's been involved with, that we've talked about today, I think it's pretty safe to assume that he's not like the nicest guy around. He's kind of a jerk. He's not that cool. Since I'm getting to the conclusion of this video, I want to start off by apologizing for the background video. There isn't a ton of things to go off of here when it comes to Tengus, so I kind of just decided to kill ghouls this whole time as the background video. Also, I didn't steal, I borrowed somebody's video on the Grush Drag 3 because it was taking me too long to trigger them, so go check out that video that is in the description below. I also probably used someone else's video in the Once Awake quest. I think there might be a way to replay quest, which I might do for this, but I will probably just use the video I watched to actually do research because I don't feel like playing through it again. Anyway, if I can even play through it again, because I'm not starting a whole new account to do that shit. Whatever. But whatever gameplay I may have borrowed or may not have will be in the comments below, since obviously I'm not making an entire new account to play through the Once Awake quest again. To really conclude this video, I like to re-say my opinion on Dr. Tengus. He's a guy with a goofy name, a really goofy design, the Digital Extremes made very early in the development of the game for a good laugh, and then they decided to continually credit him with off-screen things as a way to continue the meme. I don't see a huge chance that Tengus ever actually makes an appearance in Warframe, but I could absolutely be wrong, and I do hope I am wrong, since Tengus could be a funny little guy to fight. It is interesting that they use someone like Tengus to show why Vahek is the way he is, which would be an interesting choice for such a throwaway character. Like, I mean, Vahek is very important, and to use someone as dumb as Tengus to be his backstory is kind of dumb. I don't know. Finally, I have one theory I want to end on. At the end of the Ascension comic, it showcases Vahek screaming maggot while grabbing Tengus. I'll put it on the screen right now. Which could possibly be the comic implying that Vahek killed Tengus, which is why we haven't seen him in the game. And if my timeline is correct, that would make sense and be possible. That's kind of like what I built my timeline around, because at first I kind of thought Ascension was before everything else, but I was like, that doesn't really make sense. And then if he does kill, if Vahek does kill him at the end, it would make sense for Ascension to be last, because how would he invent things if he's dead? So that's kind of like my thought process on it. Let me know if you guys agree with that. Like I said, there's not a lot of dates going on here, and you can't just go in order of like what was added to Warframe, because that's not how Warframe adds things. Like, they'll add content for a specific person after they're already dead, because in the actual chronological timeline, they didn't die yet when that actually happened. But even though it's the newest content, like, you know what I'm talking about. You guys know what I mean. Anyway, that's all I got. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something new or found it entertaining. It's not as long as a normal boss video, and it doesn't look as nice in my opinion, but we were working with limited resources here today, baby. Thank you all so much for the support. Please become as parasocial with me as possible, and give me your entire paychecks, okay? Give me all of your money. Give me all of the balloons. Okay, become my simps. I am an attractive e-girl that just so happens to be trapped in a grown man's body who is also straight. But I am an attractive e-girl in reality, and you should simp for me. Also, the next antagonist I work on for one of these videos might not be from Warframe. I'm thinking about doing an interesting little guy. I have a little idea, you know, going on. But yeah, we'll be releasing some more Warframe content, of course. Don't worry about that. It's just I want to branch out a little bit. But stay blessed, stay healthy, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe, you beautiful people. Goodbye.